my name is Reggie. Today I'll be sharing with you another book review. This time it is for The Heartbeats of Wing Jones by Katherine Weber. This book was also published in the UK with a different cover and under the title of Wing Jones. I did receive an e-arc of this book in exchange for my honest review, and I'm so glad I got to read this book early because it is one that I was anticipating for a very long time and one that I ended up loving quite a bit. This story follows our protagonist, who is obviously named Wing Jones, and is actually set in the 90s. It's like modern day past. It's very interesting because it feels very contemporary, but you can see little nuances that show that it's not quite contemporary. The main character doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't reference it. There's not a lot of modern day technology going around, things like that. It's very subtle, but if you're thinking about it, you can definitely pick up on that. It's also set in the United States, in the South, I believe Georgia. And my favorite aspect of this book is Wing Jones is biracial. This story follows our very secluded Wing. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She idolizes her older brother and tries to hang out with him and his very adorable and very sweet girlfriend, who she thinks is one of the coolest people on the planet, as well as her older brother's best friend, who she happens to have a massive crush on. So already the story seemed a little contrived. Don't worry, push through it, cause things are gonna hit the fan. Wing's father was a police officer and he was killed in the line of duty, and so it is just her mom, her grandmothers, and her brother trying to figure out this crazy thing called life. I'm making this book sound super cheesy. In a way it is. And then suddenly it's not. As tragedy strikes Wing's family, she finds herself more lost and alone than ever before. And she takes to running in order to run away from her problems. But turns out she's actually really good at running. This book does have a magical realism element to it. It's very small. I wouldn't consider this a magical realism book. I would consider this a contemporary book with a magical realism aspect. Wing has two creatures who comfort her during these times of tragedy. They have come during the current story plot, but before they came when her father passed away. And these creatures are a lion and a dragon, which are very fitting for the different cultures she is a part of. I love that running is seen as such a positive force in this book, and that it kind of helped Wing break out of her shell, become more accepting of her body, become more accepting of the things that are happening around her, which she cannot in any way control. But it's also not perfect. It's not seen as this thing that takes away all her problems, because it doesn't take away all her problems, and in some ways it makes them worse, because running is this fun thing for her, and quickly it becomes not this fun thing for her, but something she feels like she has to do. Essentially, it's just not this perfect thing, even though it's incredibly helpful, and I love that it's not this like saving grace for her. I absolutely love the relationships that are portrayed in the story, and I'm not going to get into how much they're portrayed because I think the best thing about them are seeing how they progress throughout the story. But the relationship between Wing and her brother, between Wing and her brother's best friend, between Wing and her brother's girlfriend, between Wing's brother and his girlfriend, between Wing's brother and his best friend, between Wing and both of her grandmothers, the grandmothers' interaction with each other, mom's interaction with everyone. It's just such a heavy focus and a lovely center on everyone's relationship, and I love that. I really enjoyed the romance in the story because it was very cute and sweet, and it was also a huge reprieve from the heavy content of the story, because while everything I told you sounds kind of cheesy, it gets heavy. I'm just not telling you what happens because that would be a spoiler. There's a scene within this romance where Wing steps away from the relationship to put herself first, and I love that. That's something we don't see very often, but something that's important. I really liked the magical realism aspect. The magical realism aspect went into the writing style as well. There's a very magical, flowing way the story is written, and I absolutely love the writing. I think Katherine Weber writing just really entranced me. I love the focus, like I said, on a biracial protagonist who is trying to figure out her identity. I mentioned earlier this year, I believe, that I want to read more stories about biracial characters, and I'm glad that it had that focus. I really love the depictions of money, struggles, and the depiction of the health care system. It was very interesting. The only thing I did not like about the story was there was some girl shaming in it. There was one line where a girl that Wing becomes acquaintances with throughout the course of the novel gets pregnant, and we assume has an abortion because Wing says, you know, she didn't have the baby. And that character is definitely shamed for that in the narrative. Wing says she isn't shaming her, but there's definitely language that supports that this is not something that's condoned. And while I don't think you should really be condoning teenage pregnancy. I also don't believe in shaming a character for it, and I don't think that really progressed the story in any way, and I don't think it was really necessary. And honestly, it was just like a couple of lines, and the story, I believe, would have been so much stronger without those couple of lines, to be completely honest. It just felt so different from everything else that was being said in the story and felt so incredibly unnecessary. I honestly don't know why it was there. It was very brief, but because it was such a contrast to the strong story, it also stuck out very heavily for me. I don't know if these lines are edited or changed in any way in the final copy, so if you have read the final copy of this story, let me know. It did have some moments that were slower, and I appreciated those because we were really exploring Wing's emotions, her pain. We had a slower burn on the relationship. I really liked that Katherine Weber took her time constructing the story. However, I would let you know that it's not necessarily the fastest paced read. It's definitely a character driven story. And while a lot of things are going on in that, I think the emphasis on the characters do slow down the plot. I think that's to its benefit, not its detriment, but I do think that's important for you to know in case you really like fast-paced books. And overall, I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. That is all for today's video. If you've read this book, you should definitely comment down below and let me know what you thought of it. If you haven't already, you should subscribe because that makes you the greatest person alive, and thumbs up this video because that's also a pretty amazing thing you can do. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!